Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. It's 2 o'clock. My name's Robin, and this is the M Word. Thank you for joining us here today. Whether you are a returning viewer or watching for the first time, it's good to have you on board. As you well know by now, these sessions we attempt to run every Thursday, and the idea really is to share a bit of a virtual tea break, coffee break, fizzy pop break, whatever it is that you're drinking break, and talk through a workflow, a tip, a trick, a what's new feature inside of one of the many design, collaboration and model authoring tools that we support and sell solutions for here at Man & Machine. So thank you very much for being with us today. So over the past few weeks we've been trying something a little bit different with regards to the content for these sessions. And we've been putting posts out on our LinkedIn channel and getting people to vote for the content that they would most like to see for that session. So not for the first time this year, I don't know what I'm actually going to be showing. So I'm just going to go onto my phone and refresh the vote and see where we are, because it was very close earlier. So as of right now, we're showing animation in 3ds Max. So perhaps we'll cover some keyframe animation and some physics animation as well. Might be quite interesting. But I'll just leave it open for another couple of minutes just to see if we get any last minute takers. The other options were frame generator using Inventor, phasing or design options using Revit, or freeform modeling in Fusion. So head over onto our LinkedIn page. If you want to put a last minute vote on, I'll refresh it in another 30 seconds or so, and we will go with whatever you guys choose. Just a little plug, I guess, whilst we're introing. Remember to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well so that you can see when we put new content up and when we go live. Because it's not just myself that comes on here every Thursday. Different members of my team and other people within the organisation here will regularly put videos up on the channel. Some of them might be short videos over a couple of minutes giving you a fix to a problem, for example. and other videos are a much longer, in-depth video demonstration or even free training for a specific product. So please give us a like, give us a subscribe, and give us your feedback. Let us know what you want to see so that we can make these sessions as useful as possible. So the last refresh then, let me just come off and go on and just make sure that we haven't got any other votes. No, okay, I'll close the vote there. We're on animation in 3ds Max, 35% of the vote, which is good because when I checked it earlier, that was actually bottom with like 1 vote. So thank you to everyone that voted, and we'll have a little look at 3ds Max. So again, still getting used to a lot of the new gear here, so not quite as slick as usual, but let's get myself into the corner of the screen and share my desktop. There we go, perfect. So 3ds Max. Luckily, I installed Max not an hour before this session. Part of me was thinking I won't need to put it on here because we've got a new stream machine, a Dell Precision from Elmtech. So thank you very much for that, chaps. Yeah, luckily I installed it because that's what we need for today. So anyone that has an AEC collection from Autodesk, so an architectural engineering and construction collection, or a product design manufacturing collection from Autodesk will have access to 3ds Max. And 3ds Max is a renowned professional grade rendering and animation tool. So many of the things that you see on TV, in film, in studio, will at some point come through the likes of Max and Maya and the other M&E products for Autodesk Media Entertainment. So the fact that we've got these for our own use inside of the collections, the industry collections that we have, for me is fantastic because actually if you are designing a product inside of Inventor or Fusion 360 or designing a building or a space inside of Revit, we can use the tools that we have to our disposal inside of Max to do some photorealistic rendering, some more realistic animations of the product or whatever it might be. So I like it as a product. I think it's great. I am a bit of a geek, so I guess some of that is down to that inner geekiness, so to speak. But it's a really nice product to use, and actually it works really, really well. What's going to be a bit annoying is the logo up here. For actually Max, we're using that top corner quite a lot inside of Max. So if you bear with me, I'm going to try and resize that logo. I mean, I could just turn it off. Should I turn it off? No, I quite like it on there. I'm going to try and make it a little bit smaller so it's not quite in the way. And hopefully my live stream will update as necessary with a slightly smaller logo, just so that you can see what's going on with the control panel at the top right there. So because this was live vote, I've not really prepared anything to show as such, but that's the benefit of Max. It's so easy to do these keyframe animations and stop-start animations, as well as some physics animations. It works quite well. So let's just get into it and show you the kind of stuff that we can do. So anyone that's new to Max, you kind of have these 4 viewports by default. I usually just go into a maximum full screen, so hold down Alt and press W on your keyboard with one of those viewpoints selected and it will maximize it. You can do the same, Alt and W, to go back to a split 4 viewpoint setup. And then once you've got that full screen viewpoint in there, you can press L for the left view, R for the right view, F for the front view, T for the top view, or P to go back to the perspective view, as you see fit. But what we have here is a viewpoint that we can control and use. So let's start with the really simple stuff. So I want to do some basic keyframe animation inside of Max. How do I do that? Doesn't matter whether you're importing objects in or using Max primitives, which I think we'll have to do today because I haven't certainly anticipated having to bring anything in. It's really straightforward. We are first of all in this example going to start by just drawing some basic geometry. So why not start with the Utah teapot? Let's come and choose the teapot tool. And I'm just going to click and hold my mouse somewhere roughly in the center of this grid here. Keep my mouse held down and just drag out to the side or to the top or the bottom, doesn't matter which way, with your mouse until the Utah teapot there is the size that you want it to be. Why is it called a Utah teapot? It's because it's the first thing that was 3D modeled and rendered using a computer. So butyl teapot. Once we've got that in, I'm going to go to the rotate gizmo at the top of my screen here. I'm going to press A to turn on angle snaps, and I'm just going to rotate this round so it looks a little bit nicer for the camera, like so. And then go back to my select objects tool. So first things first, a couple of bits with Max. So Max is very visual. So whilst there are units there, the units, typically I see them as unit lists. So you can tell it to use millimeters or meters or feet and inches. But think of it as a unit list application, as long as you keep within the realms of what you're working in. So if it's millimeters, well, it's 1 is a mil, 1,000 is a meter. If it's unit list, think about that same kind of scale from a distancing perspective, and you'll be absolutely fine. We're not overly fussed with regards to how big or how small you make something. We make it to look right and make it to look good. So for that purpose, I've not really bothered with the size for this teapot. I've just modeled it correct for the camera. So what we want to do with this teapot is maybe get it to do a couple of things. So first things first, let's show you how to spin this around on the spot. Maybe you've brought in a product from Inventor or Fusion, and you want to do a turntable, that's a mouthful, turntable animation, and just spin this thing round over a given time. All I'm going to do with my teapot is just up the quality a little bit. So I'm going to go to my modify tools at the top here. We can rename the teapot if we want to. We can change the color of the teapot, so why would we not make it red? Because I like red. So let's make it red. We can change the radius. Again, I'm unitless, but I'm going to round it down to 15. And we can make it smoother by upping the segments. So if I make it, the more segments I make it, the more faces it has. So if I press F4 on the keyboard, you can see it's got loads of faces on it, as opposed to with 8, no, not 64, 8, it has far less. The more faces it has, the smoother it is, the less faceted. So I'm just going to up it to 16 for the purpose of this. It doesn't really matter for what we're going to do, but I like it to look a little bit neater. So keyframe animation. We have along the bottom a timeline. And on my particular model that I've got open here, the timeline is running from key 0, so frame 0, all the way through to frame 100. Dependent on what video format you're outputting in, will depend on whether that frame size or length is suitable for what you're after. So if you think typically 25 frames per second UK video, if you made a 2-second video, you need 50 frames. So my 100 frames here at 25 frames per second would give me a 4-second video. If you were going for 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second, you just need to think about how you are positioning your frame. I don't need to change it for what I'm showing you today, but I'm going to show you how you would. Just underneath the play, pause, and skip to start, skip to end things here, we've got a time configuration. If we click time configuration, you can see that we've got a frame rate here. So I can set it to NTSC US video, standard PAL video, I can adjust the keys, I can have it for film, or I can have custom. So I'm just going to go with PAL. We'll have it at 30 frames per second, pretty standard nowadays actually, and we'll keep it as it is. So what we can see is that at 30 frames per second, we need to have 30 of these blocks for every 1 second of video. So let's imagine that we want to have 4 seconds of video or 5 seconds inside of Max. We're going to need to have 150 frames to basically say that we've got 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Okay, so set up your time configuration to suit the output that you're going to want to render to eventually. Okay, so I've got mine at 150 here, assuming 30 frames per second. We then literally have keyframe animation. Think of it a little bit like stop-go animation. So all of the Aardman Animation Studio stuff, so the Wallace and Gromit stuff made out of modeling clay. They will take a picture, move something, take a picture, move something, take a picture, and do that over frames and frames and frames, and it takes a huge amount of work. Recently on Netflix, the new Pinocchio stop-go animation on there, it's the same thing, right? They make a tiny little movement, they take a picture. Max is going to use this keyframe animation in the same way. we don't have to make such small movements unless we want to, but we're going to take a picture or create a keyframe, make a movement, and then create another keyframe, and then the objects will move within that particular keyframe setup. So if I want this thing to spin around over my 5 seconds, I've got two options. I can manually create the frames, or I can choose for Max to automatically create the frames. Dependent on the wider aspect of what you're creating, if you're doing a load of other animation, then create the frames manually. If not, then go with the auto key. So we're going to turn on auto key for the purpose of this. And when auto key is turned on, you'll notice that the timeline here goes red, and you get a red mark around the outside of your viewport. That shows you that what you're about to do will add animation keys to the components. We're starting at nothing, so maybe I want the first second of my animation to be with this thing stood still. I don't want it to move. So I'm going to either manually move my slider to frame 30, or indeed type in frame 30 down here. And then I need to tell Max, make key. So I'm going to say set a key at that particular point. So click this, this big plus button with the key next to it. I then want a second of animation. So let's go to frame 60. And on frame 60, let's go and choose our rotation tool. I didn't have my object selected. Always make sure you select the objects that you want to assign the key to. Frame 30, select the object, click the big plus. You should see these little markers appear on the timeline. You've got red translation, so movement, green is rotation, and blue is scale. So go to frame 60. I'm going to select my rotation tool. I don't need to add a key this time because I'm on auto key. So whenever I do anything, it will animate. So I'm going to hover over my gizmo, grab my, my middle axis there, and I'm just going to spin it round 360. I've got angle snap on again, A, so it makes it jump in nice increments for me, but I'm going to spin that round 360 and let go. I'm then going to turn off auto key. I'm going to return to the start of my video, go back to select object mode, deselect the component and press play. You should have the object stay still, and then the object will rotate around 360 degrees. It's quite instant, so there's no control at this stage as to the speed in which that rotation starts and then continues on at. We can change that through graph editors. Maybe we'll save that for another day due to the length of time that will take to talk through. But we've got our second of stillness, and then we have our second of 360 degree spin. If you did want to change the speed of any of these, I mean, I could Windows select any of these frames and move them, so I can put that up to a 2-second animation to make that much slower. Okay, I don't want to do that, Control Z. But if you're wanting to change the speed, as I say, I won't go into it in detail today, but you want the graph editor. So if we go into the graph editor, we've got track view curve editor and track view dope sheet. If I go into the curve editor, you'll notice that we've got, for the teapot, rotation, and we can see our rotation here. We can see that it goes from nothing, it speeds up, constant speed, and then starts to slow down. We can add nodes and points into here and change the Bezier curves with these handles to make it accelerate slower, accelerate more rapidly, so on and so forth. I won't go into that today, but as you can see, there's a whole raft of different tools in there to allow you to control how quickly or slowly or how something is moving. Okay, so that's using the curve editors. So we've got this spinning round 180 degrees, really simple. If that's all you wanted to do, and I now wanted to render out a video of that, I'm not going to because it will take me a little while to render out those videos. But what we can do is we can come up to our render setup. So there's two ways of rendering outputs from something like Max. So using Arnold, I would scroll down, configure all my other render settings, of course, but scroll down and then you've got your outputs. Set your output size, first of all, and then make sure you've got a camera or something set up in Max to capture that area of the screen. So let's say 1920 by 1080, for example. So I set up the size of my output. I then, inside of my window here, maybe I want to create a camera from my view. That means that I'm now inside a camera. I can see that because there is now a camera just here. So C for camera, I'm inside my camera. Let's change the field of view to get it a little bit closer here. Maybe let's dolly it over a little bit, and then maybe let's roll the camera. Not roll the camera, that's not what I want to do at all. Dolly the camera. No, I've done that. Tilt, orbit. There we go. Let's orbit the camera a little bit so that it's looking a little bit flusher on there. So get the camera where we want it. From that output, we can then say right click on the camera listing here. We can show safe frames and turn on viewport clipping. And what's within that box is what's going to output at your 1920 by 1080. So you get everything like that set up. Check our other videos if you want a little bit more of an insight on that. And then we'd come down and we'd say that we want to have either my active time segment, 0 to 150, or a specific range. In my case, 0 to 60 frames. Okay. What we do there is we then say that we want to take those components and save them as a file. So under render output, I'd click files, go to a location, and I would save in whatever format you see fit those particular frames. Now, personally, and this is just the way I was always taught, so could be wrong, don't take my word for it, but it's never done me any harm and it's always done me very well. Rather than going out directly from a video in Max, which can try and overly compress the video or overly uncompress the video and not give you the best results, I'll always render out each frame as a sequence. So I'll choose a very high quality, uncompressed, big file sized image format, something like a TGA or something like that, for example. And I would render out using whatever gamma override settings you want. And I would render out each image as its own, or each frame as its own image. So off the back of this, I would get 60 images. I would then use a tool. Max has tools inside it. We'll save those for another day. Or you can use any photo editing software, or there are freebies out there to basically take those frames and stitch them together. You just tell the other software that there's 30 frames, 30 images for each second of video, and it will stitch them all together. That way you can distribute that render over a bucket rendering farm and stuff like that. Be conscious on hardware. If you're using a CPU renderer like Arnold, you want to make sure that you don't have massively different CPUs because you could get some final gather differences and stuff like that. So yeah, we're not going to do any rendering today, but once you've got your animation, that's how you could export it. That aside, let's get back to just using this properly. So let's delete that camera. So I've got my teapot doing a 360. Let's say that after the 360, I want it to shoot off in a direction. Okay, so all I need to do once again is select the teapot, go to where I want that to start. So let's just say frame 65. I'm going to press the plus sign. I'm going to go into a top-down view, and I'm going to roughly try and go in the direction of the spout there. So let's go and grab my move. Make sure, as I say, that you've pressed the plus key button to add the key to start where your timeline is. Turn on auto key, and I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to say roughly there. Okay. And then did that wrong. Undo. Make sure you move first. So we need to go up to 95, 30 frames a second. Then make our move. From there, I'm going to have another break of 5, add a key, go to rotation, spin this thing around. I keep forgetting to add the second key. Add the key, 30 frames. No, that'll be okay. 5 frames, spin it around. Something like that, that'll do. And then add the key, 30 frames, move forwards. So we're basically adding a key, specifying the time, and then moving the component. We go through in that way, and if I now go into my perspective mode and hit the play, waits a second, spins around over a second, move forward, turn, and then move forward again. it's literally stop-go animation, and we can do that with as many different components as we want, and indeed have multiple things going on at any one time. Fairly straightforward. So that's how we do some basic stop-go animation, but Max doesn't end there. That's a very simple way in which we can do some basic animation. We can also do some real-time physics-based animation inside of Max. We can also use particles to animate things, and basically anything that has a slider we can animate. Okay, I'm going to reset my scene. File, reset, don't save. Yes, I want to reset. Let's get another Utah teapot in the middle because they're great. Let's spin it round, and I tell you what, this time let's make it red because red is great. And with that component in there, what we're going to do is show you that we can animate it in different ways. So this time I'm going to right click and go to the object properties. Anything with a slider you can animate. These are sliders, okay? Anything with a slider we can animate. So I'm going to say go to frame, add a key at frame 0, go to frame 30, add another key, go to frame 60, so stay as it is for a second, and then at frame 60 we're going to go to the object properties and we're going to roll its visibility down to 0. Okay. Once we've done that, we're going to press OK. We're going to add a key, and we should be able to see. Didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? Undo a few times. Okay, good. Practice what you preach. Object properties. What have I missed there? Object properties. Visibility 0. Did I not have auto key on? I didn't have auto key on. My mistake. Let's put that visibility up to 1. I told you this was unprepared. So get to here, turn on auto key, add the keys, go up to frame 60, object properties, auto key is on, slide the visibility marker to 0. You see it's gone red, it's animated, press OK. Turn off auto key, go back to the start. We then have an animation of our component fading out. So anything with a slider, we can animate. Okay. What else can we do? Let's try and do something fairly cool. So let's go into here and let's put in a Utah teapot. And with that Utah teapot, let's leave it this sort of cream color this time. Let's try and destroy the teapot. So let's go and create a P-bomb. So let's go into space warps. So create a component, go to the plus, go to space warps, which is a force, and come down to P-bomb, particle bomb. So choose particle bomb, and then we go and click somewhere in the space. Doesn't really matter where that is, but we can go and just stick it somewhere in the space, like so. And then when we go to our modify list, we've got a load of options as to how that that component is going to go off, basically. So how is that component going to act? So from here we can choose, it's going to be spherical, sorry. We can choose a percentage of chaos, when it's going to start, how the duration is going to be, so on and so forth, and how that particle bomb is going to work. What we can then do is we can select our teapot and we can assign it and bind it to a space warp. So if I say bind to space warp, click and hold the teapot and let go over the P-bomb. If I then move my, I've not done this for a long time, so you're going to have to bear with me. If we then move the timeline, I was expecting that to go off, but I must have missed a step. Let's unlink them. Let's break the links there and just double check that particle bomb configuration. That looks okay. Unlimited range. Strength is 1, start 0. Duration 50. Chaos more. What have I missed? Have I missed something? I thought that's all you had to do. It's been such a long time since I done it. Maybe I have. Maybe I have this thing in bomb rather than p-bomb. Let's put that in there. Go across here. Expand. No, can't remember. Okay, let's do something else instead. Do something slightly more cool to finish off. That was going to be my closing piece, but I can't remember how to do it, so I can't do it at all. So in that case, what we'll do is we will create a quick box. So let's go ahead and create a box. Let's put that box along there like so, and just make some sort of floor, okay? Press G to turn off the grid, and then we're going to go and create a load of small boxes. Maybe like this, look a little bit like dominoes, okay? I'm going to go and grab said domino and move it over here, like so that I've got that component just sat on top. Now what I'm going to do with this component is I'm going to go to the modifier list and I'm going to choose from the drop down. Again, it's been a little while, so bear with me. I'm going to go and choose, where have you gone now? Under the animation drop down at the top, go to Mass FX, go to Rigid Bodies and choose a dynamic rigid body. With that dynamic rigid body, I'm then going to make a load of copies of it. Okay, so hold down Shift and move it forwards, and let's create 10 of them. I'm then going to create this last one on a little bit of an angle, again with Shift held down, something like that. Let's create another 10 of them. Okay, and then we should be able to position each of those in turn around the corner. I should have used object paint or a pattern, it would have been easier, but because that last one didn't work, I'm all out of sorts and thinking, what can I do to finish this off? So let's place one of those, one of those, one of those somewhere. That'll do, that'll do, that'll do, and then that one. Let's get rid of the rest. I was a little bit over enthusiastic there with 10 of them. That should be okay, that should be enough. And then let's grab that one and move it all across in this direction. 10 of them. So I've basically created a dynamic rigid body and patterned it around like so. What I'm then going to do is select the floor and go to Animation, Mass Effects, Rigid Body, Static Rigid Body. I'm going to create one more of these on the far end, just here. That one I'm going to grab as a, not a rigid body like so. And then if I say Animation, Constraints, Mass Effects, and use a kinematic rigid body, it will allow me to use a mixture of stop-go animation with the dynamic Mass Effects tools. So if I go to a front view on the side, I'm going to use a animation between frame 0 and frame 5, which is going to knock down to about there. So I've got a short animation of this domino starting to fall over. Okay. What I'm then going to do is, with that selected, I'm going to say it's kinematic until frame 3 or 4. Okay. In other words, until it's before it stops moving, and it will take on the speed and the acceleration and then turn its movement into a dynamic movement. Okay. So what we should be able to do now, all being well, is say Animation, Mass Effects, Utilities, show the Mass Effects tools, and with these selected, I should be able to go and hit play, and it should push over all of my dominoes like so. Pretty cool. And with these Mass Effects tools, you can do all sorts of different animations. So we're basically using gravity and contact to drive different bits of information. Once you've got that animation created, we could go ahead and select Bake All. It might not actually finish for this one, but what that will do, it will, good old computer that I'm running now, is that will then bake those animations onto those components. So you can see each one of these components now has a load of translation and rotation up against it, and therefore I could render that output. So yeah, we've got the ability to create pretty much any type of animation that we might want to, which is really, really useful. So I guess that brings us to an end. So I hope that's been useful. We've done a bit of animation inside of 3ds Max. We've shown you how to do some basic keyframe animation, so stop-go animation technique, which I use a teapot, but you could use any geometry imported from any different components to do that. So in Revit, you could open and close a door, or open and close a window, or indeed have a wall fading in or fading out, or raising up from the floor to show some timeline animation, for example. We can bring across a component from Inventor to show how it explodes and comes back together, although you would use an Inventor presentation for that, obviously. You could show how an object opens or moves, or how gears work together, or how constraints work. Or you could just, as I've done here, have a load of fun and just use some of the animation tools. So hopefully one of those methods is useful for you and gives you something that you can use in your day-to-day functionality. Don't forget to give us a like, give us a subscribe, let us know what you want to see next time. So as I say, check us out on LinkedIn, go and look at the vote, which we'll try and put up a little bit earlier next week, so maybe Monday, Tuesday. And I suggest what we'll probably do is just remove 3ds Max from the list, and then we've got Frame Generator in Inventor, freeform modeling inside of Fusion 360, design options and phasing inside of Revit, and the fourth one we will use, I mentioned it a second ago, let's do presentation files inside of Inventor Professional. So there's 4 options that we'll put out for next week. I hope that's been useful for you. I hope it's been a bit of fun and you've enjoyed the M word this Thursday with a cup of tea. Sorry if you've had a bit of banging and noise in the background. We had some building works going on. Hopefully the mic has picked it up and got rid of it, but if there was some noise in the background, I apologise. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good weekend ahead, and we'll see you at the same time next Thursday for the next episode of the M Word. Take care. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.